Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name is Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 26 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Today we were discussing chapter 25 of A Game of Thrones, which is Eddard 5.
We'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, and indulge in a little pedantry. Be sure to check out our show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How's things?
All right. How about you?
I'm fine. I got hurt playing soccer.
Yes, you did. But you have quite the limp going on there. You limp. You play soccer a lot, and you limp a lot. But this is one of the more significant limps I've seen you...
I've done something to my calf muscle, and last time I did it, something like this, I was out like 4 weeks without any soccer.
Well, there is a silver lining for me, is that you come to lunch more often. When you're...
Yeah, that's for me too.
Anyway.
All right.
So, should we do it?
Let's do it.
All right.
Quick recap of what Eddard was up to previously. Last time we saw him, he was saying goodbye to Cat, who'd come down to King's Landing to share her opinions on the assassination attempts on Bran.
The dagger news.
Yes, and he was setting up Arya with her dancing master, Syrio Pycelle, to teach her sword fighting, that is, not dancing. McKelly, why don't we give them the summary?
Let's do it. I'll give it a start.
Okay.
Eddard is in the chambers of Grand Maester Pycelle. He's trying to figure out Jon Arryn's movements in his last few days. Pycelle tells him Jon Arryn hadn't seemed himself, but that Jon did have a full plate of burdens to worry about. But otherwise, he looked healthy. Jon Arryn borrowed a book from him, and the next day his illness began, and he deteriorated quickly. On his deathbed, Jon Arryn called for Robert, who sat with him for hours, and his last words were, "The seed is strong."
Ned mentions Jon's wife, Lysa Arryn, thought his death unnatural. Pycelle suggests that Lady Arryn was shattered and paranoid after her husband's death. When Ned questions whether poison could have been used, Pycelle again rejects the idea. As Ned leaves, he asks Pycelle to see the book that Jon Arryn was reading. Pycelle agrees to send it to Ned's chambers.
Yep. So after Ned leaves, on his way back to his chambers, he stops and has a quick talk with Arya about Bran's future. And when he gets back to his chambers, he's told Peter Littlefinger Baelish would like a word. Littlefinger has been busy helping Ned on his quest to solve the mystery behind Jon Arryn's death. He's found 4 people to question who have ties to Jon Arryn. Littlefinger then points out spies in the yard watching Ned's windows. One belongs to Lord Varys, the other reports to Queen Cersei herself. As Littlefinger leaves, he tells Ned that Ned not trusting him was the wisest thing he's done since he arrived.
Yeah. So, it's pretty hot in King's Landing.
Yeah, we didn't mention that in the summary. But...
Yeah, but Ned's stripped down to sort of silks, and he's still sweating like a Stark in King's Landing.
Exactly. Yeah, but right at the beginning of the chapter, Maester Pycelle goes on this long monologue about how hot it is and about how some think it's the hottest summer, like on record or whatever, but he believes that hottest summer was during Maekar Targaryen, the first of his name's reign about 70 to 80 years ago, and that summer lasted for 7 years. So.
And presumably there aren't too many people around to contradict him on this. Because
him, Odnan, Maester Aemon. That's about all we got so far.
I didn't tell you, I got elbowed in the mouth and got my mouth cut yesterday as well. Like 4-minute penalty, I think, that one.
Wow,
yeah.
Man.
I had a bad day.
You did.
Yeah.
And that was during coaching, right?
No. My coaching went well today.
Yeah?
They won.
All right.
We had a new kid on the team who was very good.
That helps.
So Pycelle says that Jon Arryn hadn't seemed himself for a while. Obviously, as hand of a king like Robert, one has some worries and concerns to weigh down on you.
Yeah, he specifically mentions running the realm, and I have written here Robert's follies in quotation marks, because Ned, on his first day of work, has started to notice the amount of follies in Robert's leadership. But he's also got a sickly son, little Robert Arryn, and his wife is, I guess, neurotic might be a good term.
Well, certainly that's what Pycelle seems to think of her, but I wonder if this stems from before his death. I mean, is she now neurotic,
Right,
because
sure.
of the death, or was she like this? In the recap, you said that Arryn called out for Robert, meaning the king, but there was some ambiguity, as I recall,
Yes.
that it could have been his son
Absolutely.
he was calling out for.
He specifically, Pycelle specifically says, could have been calling for either of the two Roberts, but Lysa wouldn't let little Robert go see him because she was afraid he might catch whatever it was that Jon had.
Right. So at least at that time, she didn't think it was poison then. She thought it was a
Right.
disease of some sort.
Yeah, that's true. At least according to Maester Pycelle.
Of course, yeah, we're getting that third hand.
Yeah. And he mentions that later when Ned mentions the idea of poison. He says that since her last stillborn birth, I think it was miscarriage or stillborn birth, one or the other, that she'd been seeing enemies in the shadows, in every shadow or something like that.
So her neuroses began prior.
Seems like it.
Right.
They seem to be growing.
Which makes it easier for people like Pycelle. If you assume Pycelle is just an innocent narrator of events here, for him to discount her accusations, because he's already seen her acting this way. So the interesting thing that Pycelle sent Jon Arryn's maester away and took over his care.
Yeah. That's just a little sketchy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends. When you compound it with some of the other kind of sketchy things that Pycelle says and does in this chapter, this looks sketchier than otherwise.
Yeah, because on its own, I mean, he is very senior as a maester,
Right.
and the maesters are the doctors, basically.
Yes.
He ought to have some, I mean, it depends in some ways, because I think sort of in modern Western medicine, we actually sort of like tend to favour younger doctors a little bit over older doctors, but the experience that this guy has is clearly potentially very beneficial.
Yes. He was afraid. He said that Coleman was young and that Pycelle felt he didn't understand how to treat older bodies. He was using wasting potions and pepper juice, purging him apparently. So I guess he figured he doesn't know how to properly handle it.
Yeah.
And, I looked it up. Jon Arryn was a rather older gentleman. His birth is not... they gave a date range somewhere between 218 and 220 AC. And we're currently in 298.
So 70...
AC. He's 78 to 80 years old.
Almost 80 years old. Yeah,
The
interesting.
2 to 4 years younger than Pycelle. Because Pycelle was born in 216 AC.
But I think you mentioned this before. It feels like if Pycelle was concerned, he should have got involved, but not necessarily sent the other one away.
Right.
If you send the other one away, it feels like you want control. And if you want control, why do you want control?
Yes, two minds are better than one.
Right, yeah.
You would think, Maybe, Coleman has been more recently through the Maester program at the Citadel. Maybe he's learned some newer techniques, such as using wasting potions and pepper juice.
Oh, but the argument that he doesn't understand an old body the same way that Pycelle does is actually a pretty decent argument.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I
might not understand what an older body can handle.
Right, exactly. I mean, if I was 80 and you told me to take this stuff and it's going to... Pycelle might go look at that and go, that's going to kill him. Yeah.
True.
So yeah, we don't know whether Jon Arryn called out for which Robert. We know that King Robert was by his bedside and his son Robert was not.
Right, talking and joking and trying to raise his spirits. But, yeah, we don't know which he was calling for. So.
Yeah. Pycelle supposes that the seed is strong was a cry to his son that he would sort of like overcome his early childhood frailties and become...
he refers to it as a blessing to the son. So the very last words he says, just before closing his eyes, he tells King Robert and his wife Lysa, not Robert's wife Lysa, Jon Arryn's wife Lysa, the last thing he says is, the seed is strong. And... we don't exactly know what that means. It could have been a lot of different things.
Yeah.
He could have been saying to Robert, I'm very proud of you. You are you've done well.
King Robert.
Yes, King Robert.
Right.
He could have been speaking to him and saying, because he thinks of him like a son. So we don't know yet what exactly that means. But It is an odd thing to say about a sickly kid, unless, like you said, he's trying to say, have faith.
Yeah.
He'll be okay. Maybe he's implying he's stronger than he looks, but it's odd in general for final words, I guess.
I might be confusing this with the show now because I've just watched and read in quick succession, but Pycelle says people's last words are about as meaningful as their first.
Oh.
I think that's in the show.
Yeah.
So he's discounting it as being...
Right. I don't recall that. I just
I'm pretty sure
read
that's
it
in the
again
show,
today.
yeah.
I don't recall it being in there. But just a reminder, Lysa Arryn has accused Cersei, Queen Cersei, Robert's wife, as the poisoner of Jon Arryn. So...
Right, at least that's what we've been told by Catelyn Stark.
Yes.
Lysa's sister. Again,
Yes.
we're going to fan the flames of that conspiracy theory that Catelyn Stark is making stuff up. But apparently that's what Catelyn said Lysa accused Cersei of.
Yes.
So Pycelle says that Cersei left King's Landing before Jon Arryn died.
Yes.
And sent a raven to her to let her know.
Right.
She was on her way to Casterly Rock.
Right. You have mentioned earlier, is a logical question, it is a good one. Go ahead, you can ask it.
I don't know what question you're referring to.
I'm referring to the one when you said, if Cersei was on the road when all this went down, is she free from suspicion?
Well, I mean, the question that comes to me then is, she left King's Landing before he died. Did she leave King's Landing before he got sick? Because she may have given him a slow-acting poison.
Right.
She also,
yes.
I'm pretty confident in saying that she has used other people to act as an assassin for her. I reference the second attempt on Bran Stark's life.
If it was her, that's definitely...
If it was her, and she, above all people, had reason to want that to happen. Point. And, okay, the first attempt on Bran Stark's life, also working through a third party.
That's true.
So she has got
precedent.
Yeah, there's precedent.
Precedent set here.
And so she doesn't have to be present to be the poisoner, I would say.
Yeah. Now, all that I could find, because I went back and tried to look up to see whether when she left, and the only timeline that I could find is that in the first Ned chapter, when Robert and Ned are in the crypts, Robert tells Ned it was a fortnight between the tournament and Joffrey's name day,
right?
When he said he was fit as a fiddle, and him dying. So,
and she was definitely in town for the tournament.
She was, because the reason she was heading back to Casterly Rock in the first place is because her father, Tywin, was in town for the tournament.
And presumably he didn't leave the day after the tournament. Right. He stuck around a while.
At least waited till the tournament was over. Right. So this all happened in a 2-week period.
So. And also, let's be honest here, she's the queen. She doesn't have a lot of opportunity to go out and buy poison. But her dad's visit...
Yeah?
He could come with it.
Yeah.
Just
I hadn't thought of that.
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, when you come in, bring me some of that, the good stuff.
The good stuff. Yeah. But it's, Lysa, we have not met Lysa yet.
We haven't met Lysa, yeah.
All we know is she seems rather neurotic based on Pycelle's descriptions of her. But if she's making this up, you'd think she'd get her timeline straight. Like, Cersei wasn't even in town. But like you said, it could have been a slow-acting poison, I guess.
Yeah.
So
we hear that Pycelle served as Grand Maester of King's Landing for more than 40 years now, and under 4 different kings, which is really amazing. I mean, Robert and Aerys, sure, lots of people have served under both of them, but Aerys was around for quite a long time. Aerys was preceded by Jaehaerys, and then before that, Aegon the Fifth.
Yeah, Aegon the Fifth. Egg.
Oh, yeah. So Ned brings up the possibility of poison to Pycelle, and Pycelle... his eyes open at this.
Yes, right.
And he poo-poos the idea.
Yeah, he says, it's not the free cities.
Right, where presumably this kind of thing is more common.
Right.
Ned brings up Lysa's death, Lysa thinking that the death was unnatural, but Pycelle says she's neurotic. So.
Yeah, and this is when he says she sees enemies in every shadow.
Right.
And he blames her accusations on weakness of mind and grief, basically, that she's... Since he's taken ill, that she's... He says this kind of grief would shake even the strongest mind, and she is not that.
Yep. So is Lysa just paranoid, or does she really think Cersei did this, and why? What would Cersei's motive be for doing this? I mean, obviously, I think we've speculated before about getting more power for the Lannisters. And then that could tie in with Tywin, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
If Tywin wants to be Hand of the King again, as he used to be for Aerys.
Well, she mentions in Bran 2, when they're up in the room and Bran is overhearing them, that she wanted Jaime to fill the role of Hand of the King. And she never thought that Eddard would agree to being Hand of the King. So clearly, she did want someone else to be Hand of the King.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. That doesn't seem as thought through to me. Jaime becoming Hand of the King.
Right, yeah. Because when she mentioned it, Jaime was like, I have no interest in that job.
Yeah.
So clearly they hadn't discussed it a lot beforehand, it seemed.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
But, I mean, whilst his death does seem unnatural, he was old. I mean, he was almost 80 years old, so...
Yeah, and Pycelle says he knows symptoms of poison, and he saw none, so...
Right. Although, I gotta say, I mean, the symptoms of poison, feeling weak and being sick and dying, that seems like quite a few poisons would have that as a group of symptoms.
Yes, doubling over with stomach pain, and then... getting, falling ill till he can't get out of bed. It could be food poison so far.
Right. It feels like ingesting pretty much anything that wasn't food could lead you to this.
Have you considered salmonella? He was old, as we mentioned. But
so Ned says, so Pycelle sort of poo-poos the idea of saying that no one surely would do it. No man would want Jon Arryn harmed in this way.
Yes.
And that's when Ned says, but poison is a woman's weapon.
Yes, and then it takes kind of an interesting turn here, because Pycelle then randomly brings up Lord Varys.
Well, he literally says, it's a woman's, a craven's, or a eunuch.
Yes, and he says eunuch last, what a eunuch. Yeah. So, yeah.
And then immediately says, did you happen to know that Lord Varys is from Lys, one of the free cities where people poison each other all the time?
Right. Yeah. And then he follows it up with, tells Ned you shouldn't trust the spider, which, I mean, there's one thing Ned doesn't need to be told. It's that.
Yeah.
But maybe Ned's just taking all this in, but, his internal thoughts never come to, boy, he really keeps bringing up Varys as someone to keep an eye on in this conversation. And I wonder, depends on what you think of Pycelle. If you think Pycelle is on the up and up, maybe he's subtly trying to turn Ned toward, have you considered looking at Varys as a possible suspect? Because they are both members of the small council, without saying, I think it's Lord Varys.
Yeah, but I think what you're getting at here is what I would think, which is it feels like he is throwing out any stones to deflect.
Yes.
Feels like he's got some kind of guilty conscience here, knows more than he's letting on, and is so just trying to drag anyone he can under at this point.
Yeah, he's looking for a scapegoat.
Feels like. But the writing here is very plain and vanilla. You just hear what they're saying. You don't really hear their internal thoughts about what they think of what the other person's saying.
Right.
So we're left to draw our own conclusions to a large extent here.
Yeah. So, he and Varys both served under Aerys and now under Robert. So we don't know. Maybe there's some bad blood. Maybe he has a vendetta against Varys. Or maybe he really thinks it could be Varys.
Yeah. And we know that Ned doesn't think very highly of Varys, or at least he, on a sort of personal level, he makes his skin crawl and things like that.
Yes.
But I mean, like I said, it's hard to know Ned's feelings here. But the last thought he has before he leaves, kind of throws some doubt on his belief in Pycelle as a honest broker here.
Yes. He says, what's his name? Pycelle says, I'm here. Come to me anytime. I'm here to serve. And Ned thinks,
yes, but who?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I was talking to Carson about this chapter just before we started, and I mentioned the poison being a woman's weapon, and she's watching an Aurora Tea Garden mystery.
Oh, okay.
Charlene Harris, the Suki Stackhouse writer.
Yeah.
So the Aurora Tea Garden was, and apparently in the episode she just watched, it said this was poisoned. That's a woman's weapon.
Oh, huh.
So they are.
I never heard of this before. Now it's all over the place.
Apparently, she just read George Martin's book, stole an idea, or vice versa.
Right? Yeah.
Not sure which way around.
I don't know which came first.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do know which came first. But like your dream plagiarism,
It's part. Yeah,
she could have dreamed it.
Who am I to throw stones? so Ned asked to see the book that Jon wanted. The book was on the lineages of the great houses.
Right.
This was the last thing he did before his sudden illness.
Right. And it could be coincidental, but it is. Yeah, it is something.
Hey, what are you going to do? You follow every strand,
right?
If you're an investigator.
Yes, exactly.
So I mentioned before we started actually that there's a parallel here to the book "The Name of the Rose" by Umberto Eco.
And then you had to tell me what that book was.
And then also mentioned it was a movie, and both the book and the movie are very, very good. But in that, there's a mystery surrounding a book, and everybody who gets their hands on this book ends up dying.
Oh, okay.
And what it turns out is that the corner of the book has been poisoned. So as they leaf through it and lick their thumbs,
see if people should stop
they're
doing
ingesting the poison. So,
wow.
Just if there's any more writing plagiarism going on, look out for that one here.
If that book, if Ned falls ill after reading that book, then we should check the corners. Yeah, so
Ned leaves Pycelle and he bumps into Arya. Thankfully not literally, because she's standing on one foot at the top of some stairs. She's practicing what Syrio Pycelle has taught her.
Yes, water dancers can stand on one toe for hours. And again, I'm calling hyperbole on these water dancers. I don't know about this one toe for hours thing.
Yeah, he says quite a few of these things and he doesn't demonstrate them.
Right.
Well, I could in my youth.
This feels like the epitome of hyperbole, if you ask me. That's a Brian Regan reference. Yes. Anyone is not familiar with that.
So they talk about Bran's future. He wanted to be a Kingsguard. That's really not available to him anymore.
Yeah.
But Ned then talks about Arya's future as being the lady of a holdfast somewhere, and she said, "Oh no."
I kind of liked how she didn't complain or anything. She just went, no, that sounds matter of fact. You got the wrong daughter, Dad. Sorry, that's not going to be me.
So then after that little interlude, he talks to Littlefinger.
Yeah.
They're watching Barristan Selmy practice in the yard. They have their characters are perfectly summed up by what they think when they see Barristan Selmy.
That's true.
When Ned sees Barristan Selmy, he sees a noble and heroic warrior who can fight to the very death.
Yes.
And Littlefinger sees a guy who just bores him to tears in small council meetings.
Yes. That I hadn't thought about how well that sums up their two characters right there. But, yeah. So Peter seems to be working on Ned's behalf, which I think it shocks all of us. It shocked Ned.
Well, he said, my love for Cat is why I'm going to help you guys.
And he tells him, I promised Cat I would help you, and so I'm helping you. And so it turns out he's found 4 servants of Jon Arryn's that are still left in King's Landing.
Because Lysa took the rest of her, I'm going to use the word retinue here.
Okay.
I could use entourage if you prefer, or posse. I said retinue when I was talking to Carson about this, and she said, don't use a different word.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought retinue was good.
Yeah.
So 4 of the retinue were left behind.
Yes, we got a pregnant kitchen girl, a stable hand, a pot boy who was discharged for theft.
Let me just, you've gone 3 of the 4, yeah?
Yeah.
Let me rule those 3 out. They don't sound very interesting at all.
They don't. It's the 4th.
Tell me about the 4th one.
His squire.
Well, I guess he's pretty much out of work, his squire, once Arryn is dead. But do tell.
Yeah, so his squire is still around. And it turns out that King Robert knighted him. He's now Sir Hugh of the Vale. just after Jon Arryn's death.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
That is an extraordinary turn of events.
It is.
The squire of Jon Arryn, knighted immediately after Jon Arryn's death by the king,
Yes.
suggests that the squire of Jon Arryn has done the king some big favour.
Or done someone that the king owes a favor to a big favor.
Yeah. Although, let me just give one other interpretation. As a squire, you are a wannabe knight.
Right.
And when you squire with someone and do a decent job, you'd hope that ultimately your lord would knight you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If your lord dies prematurely, you are left in the, here's my resume, but I haven't been knighted yet.
Yeah.
So there is that one possible interpretation of that.
Maybe Robert figured he was doing Jon a final favor. Like,
Right.
this is your
exactly,
squire.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to knight him for
Yeah.
you since you weren't able to.
And probably, I mean, through the small council, they probably knew each other's squires a little
Maybe.
bit.
Yeah.
And knew that Jon Arryn thought highly of Hugh.
Yeah.
And so...
Those are all very possible.
But it is awfully suspicious.
Yes, it is. Very odd timing. Like, yeah. But like you said, Jon didn't knight him. He's going to have to start all over as someone else's squire.
Right. Yeah. You'd think that if he didn't knight him, he'd at least get him another prime squireship.
Right.
So that he can continue
Yeah.
along the path.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He knighted him.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in this
and then
chapter.
kept him around.
Yeah. And he stuck around.
He sticks around.
Yeah.
I think I might have knighted him and then said, well, good luck with that. Have Lance will travel.
Right. A lot of tourneys out there.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
get them. Then things get really interesting. I mean, I felt this chapter was really interesting from the beginning. But then Peter says to Ned, hey, Ned, come here. Come to the window. I want to show you something.
Oh, because Ned says, all right, I'm going to go off and find this Sir Hugh fella.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Ned says, he's going to have all of them sent. He's going to send for all of them. And Peter Baelish is like, Ned, come here. And Ned's like, why? And he's like, if you come here, I will show you. Who hasn't used that line before? And so he comes to the window and he points out the
various people who
there's-
are spying on him.
There's a boy in the yard, and he says, see that boy out there? He is a spy for Lord Varys, who has taken quite the interest in you. Mm-hmm. And then he says, you see that guy up there? He spies for the queen. And I wondered, is he being serious, or is he just creating paranoia for Ned? You know? Because he could have just been like, well, that guy looks suspicious. I'm going to point out him. If you tell someone that person is suspicious, all of a sudden every move they make is like, he's looking at me. And Ned even says, it looks like that guy's looking in my window.
It'd be funny if the one he pointed to suddenly started hugging someone and sort of ran off somewhere. It was and the person next to him was really, really shifty. He was like, no, wait, that one.
No, the guy to the right. The guy to the right.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, we know Varys has spies everywhere, so it wouldn't be surprise.
Right. Yeah. So, but that also, Peter knows that as well. So he could, everyone knows that the Master of Whisperers has a lot of spies. So he could just be saying, oh, that guy's a spy, and that guy's a spy.
Yeah, but the point in this case is he's right. If you go off and drag them in here,
yes,
by the scruff of the neck, word is going to get back to Varys and Cersei that you did that.
Right. And then I kind of like how the chapter ends. Peter goes to leave, and Ned says, hey, Peter, thanks for your help. I might have been too quick to distrust you. And Peter says, distrusting me was the wisest thing you've done since you climbed down off your horse.
Yes.
I thought that was a pretty cool
Keeps
way to...
telling him this.
Yeah. I also like, Peter says to Ned, do you have anyone in your service that you can trust completely?
Instead of going after these people yourself.
And Ned says, yes. And Peter says, in that case, I have a palace in Valeria I'd very much like to sell you. Mm-hmm. Valeria, of course, is
ruined,
Yes,
destroyed,
ruined.
missing.
So I thought that made me chuckle.
There is a London bridge that got bought by some American and taken to Arizona. You know that?
Did not.
You didn't know that? That's true. Somebody sold this wealthy American London Bridge. It's actually literally called London Bridge, and he packed it up and shipped it to Arizona. And the story goes that he thought it was Tower Bridge, the iconic and famous one. London Bridge is just a bridge. Could be anything. You might as well just build it yourself, really.
I was wondering how that tied into this conversation.
Oh, yes. So, yeah.
I get it
You
now.
see it?
Now I get it. Yeah.
All right, background. You want to talk about Maekar,
Yes.
who presided over a 7-year summer with a very hot
Yes.
final year.
Exactly.
At least according
similar.
to disturbingly, perhaps dishonest Maester Pycelle,
Right.
who is also 70 or something, 80 years removed from this point.
Right.
in
Yeah, that's
time,
true.
so
Yeah. So
it was warm for sure.
It was. Yeah, I don't know that he could, 80 years later could say exactly which one was warmer. But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you
I
think
remember some
back,
hot summers
Right.
from my childhood, but
you know how they say, the older you get, the better you were. So maybe something like that. So, yeah, Maekar Targaryen, the first of his name, gets a reference by Maester Pycelle. And he was the 14th Targaryen king to sit the Iron Throne. And his rise to king was unexpected because he was the fourth son of King Daeron II Targaryen and Mariah Martell. And you might remember Daeron II because way back in Jon 1, he's the guy who brought Dorne peacefully into the Seven Kingdoms.
yes,
we mentioned
we did.
him in the background information of that episode. Anyway, as Maekar wasn't expected to rule, he married young to Diana Dane and had 6 kids, including the famous Aegon the Fifth, from the Duncan Egg book series, which anyone who hasn't read, I think we both would highly recommend.
McKelly in particular, he really likes that.
I
like
really
it too,
it, yeah.
but McKelly really likes that.
He earned...
Maekar.
Yeah. Maekar earned notoriety in tourneys, but later for his success in the Blackfyre rebellions, and Blackfyres are the names given to King Aegon IV's bastards that he legitimized on his deathbed. The Blackfyres make for good stories, but we'll tell those another time.
Okay.
So during the first Blackfyre rebellion, Maekar led a shield wall that held against the attack of his uncle, Bittersteel, in the Battle of Redgrass Field.
His name was Bittersteel Blackfyre. That's pretty flipping awesome right there.
Yeah, Bittersteel's a pretty cool name. Well, technically, his name was Aegor Rivers, but his nickname was Bittersteel.
Okay.
He was a Blackfyre, so... Yeah, so he led a shield wall against Bittersteel in the Battle of the Redgrass Fields, like I just mentioned. And while his brother, Baelor Breakspear, attacked the army from the rear, and Maekar's shield wall made an unyielding anvil against which the rebels were hammered and destroyed. Mm-hmm. And that earned him the nickname the Anvil. Yeah, it's a pretty cool nickname.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And despite the cool nickname, Maekar felt unappreciated, as the victory was more attributed to his brother than to his actions. So, long story short, heirs to the throne kept dying off until he was the heir to the throne. And this process was helped when he accidentally killed his own brother, Prince Baelor, Baelor Breakspear, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, during the tourney at Ashford Meadow, an event that Duncan Egg fans might recognize. Several things happened at that tourney.
Oh, yeah. I remember now.
Yeah, I say he accidentally killed him. I mean, he intentionally hit him in the head with the Morningstar. He just didn't intend to kill him when he did it. So yeah, he killed his brother, and that moved him up another notch. And an interesting note about his second son, Arryn. You had mentioned a while ago about a Targaryen who died after drinking a cup of wildfire, thinking it would turn him into a dragon.
Oh,
That's the guy.
Maekar's son, Arryn.
Yes.
He was a nutcase.
He was.
He was a loon. I mean, they're all... I mean, wait, a lot of the Targaryens, not all, but a lot of the Targaryens were scary lunatics, but he was the craziest of the bunch, I think.
And oddly, he wasn't even a product of incest.
Not directly, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all indirectly.
Yeah, right. But his mother was a Dane,
Yeah,
so he got the crazy bug that
It's in there now,
Targaryens
that's the
often
problem.
get, right, yeah. So Maekar died in battle during the Peak Uprising. It said that he was crushed by a rock. And his son Egg, a.k.a. Aegon V, succeeded him on the throne. And for some great stories about egg, I would recommend reading the Duncan Egg book series.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Okay. So comparison with the television show. Show Pycelle doesn't talk about Arryn's slow decline and the weight of the world on his shoulders. The whole scene in the book takes place in Pycelle's chambers, but in the show, it actually begins at the end of a small council meeting, and they migrate to
yeah,
the chambers.
I can see that.
Yeah, and there's no drinking of. We haven't mentioned this, but he gives him a very sweet glass of milk, and Ned finds it cloying and doesn't actually like it.
Yeah.
None of that happened in the TV show.
That would have been a pretty easy thing to slip in there too, just like make a kind of face.
Oh yeah, which actually might have gone to the whole poisoning thing. Like, what the heck am I drinking here? Yeah. There was no talk in the TV show about replacing Jon Arryn's Maester with Pycelle himself.
Oh,
that was dropped.
Okay, that's kind of a. It just adds more mystery to where Pycelle fits in all this.
Yeah. TV show Arryn never called out for Robert, so the mystery of who he was calling out to is not in the TV show. And although he did say the seed is strong, he said it wasn't his final words, he said it multiple times in his feelings. So really to reinforce that this is the important bit of this.
He's writing it out. Speaking in foreign languages.
And in the book, Pycelle promises to send the book that Jon Arryn was after to Ned. In the TV show, Ned is actually leafing through it there and there on the desk and takes it with him. He's actually carrying it under his arm when he sees Arya later. In a show scene that I don't think the book has an equivalent for, we hear Sansa say that she'll never forgive her father. And I assume she's talking about Lady.
Oh.
But in the book, although again we've brushed over this a little bit, when he sees Arya, he references back in his thoughts to the night they discovered that Bran was recovered.
Right.
And the three of them slept in the God's Wood that night.
Yeah.
And there definitely seemed to be a thawing there between Sansa and Ned.
Yeah.
But in the TV show, just prior to the Pycelle scene, we see Sansa with...
Jane Poole, maybe?
No, her Septon.
Septon Mordain.
Septon Mordain. And she says, I'll never forgive my father.
Wow, that's rather...
Yeah, again, misplaced, because it wasn't him, it was Joffrey and Cersei. So, pedantry corner, I couldn't really find an awful lot. The best I've got is everyone's inability to guess at poison. Because it's either natural causes or it's poison. These are your two choices here. And if he was perfectly healthy the day before, and then he died suddenly... Yeah, possibly a disease. Did anybody else catch it? No. Makes me think of poison.
Right. Is it going around King's Landing? Is anybody else fallen ill with this?
And so, sure, Pycelle says he knows the symptoms of all the major poisons, and Arryn didn't exhibit those, but... So that does suggest he did possibly consider the possibility and discounted it because of the lack of the symptoms he was looking for. Again, I question that because I think the symptoms he exhibited to me look like poison. But his reaction to Ned saying it is one of, I never thought of that.
Right.
It seems that way. Yeah.
This isn't the Free Cities. What?
Yeah. But then again,
possible here in
but then again, maybe that goes to the guilty conscience. Maybe Pycelle is well aware that this is poison in some way or other.
Right. Yes. This all goes back to where Pycelle falls in in all of this.
So, we're going to keep going with the show bonanza?
Yeah, we're gonna keep...
We're getting later and later in the weekend with our recording.
We are. This is not our normal recording time. We are kind of pushing the envelope here.
So, concluding, for me, the most interesting aspect of this chapter is how much do we smell complicity from Pycelle.
Yep.
At various points, he says and does things that seem like red flags. He came to me as hale and healthy as ever. The next day he was twisted in pain. Just that statement. He came to you, hale and healthy, and the next day he was twisted with pain.
Couldn't get out of bed.
It makes me think, dude, you're the fulcrum here. You're the turning point. Right. Did you offer him any of that milk? It's really sweet and nasty. Could have killed an old man.
Have you tried any of this milk?
He relieved Arryn's own Maester of Care.
Yeah. That one, That could be nothing. Exactly. Or it could be,
Yeah, as could the first one.
Right, yes.
He just happened to see him the day before he got sick.
Yeah.
he hadn't really considered poison, which to me seems a terrible omission. Mm-hmm. And he was awfully quick to point the finger elsewhere.
He sure was.
Particularly at Lord Varys.
And away from Cersei.
But yeah, I mean, the thing about the away from Cersei assumes that he knew what Ned meant when Ned said poison is a woman's weapon.
Right.
Yeah. Was his first thought, oh, he thinks it's Cersei, I better leap in and defend her? Maybe.
Right. Yeah,
maybe.
Everything with him is a maybe. So far, you know.
So it does point the finger away from Cersei, but I'm not sure we can say that Pycelle was defending Cersei.
Right.
But he was awfully quick to blame Varys. Now, clearly there's some personal animosity there, which might fuel that.
Yes.
And that's the thing, you see. You can explain all of these away. I mean, there's no reason for any of this to make you think Pycelle was directly involved.
Yeah,
his fingers are all over this. You know?
He was either bumbling his way through doing the best that he could and failing miserably, or he's somehow involved in all this. Yeah. But one thing that I thought of about him, whether or not he was coming to Cersei's defense, he's not the one that gave the information about Cersei not being there. Ned asked, was Cersei there? And he said, oh, no, she wasn't. You'd think if he was trying to protect Cersei, he might have said, worked it into the conversation, you know, that Cersei wasn't even in King's Landing.
Right, which again goes to the possibility here that he is just an innocent, just a complete innocent bystander to all of this.
Yeah.
Trying his best, you know?
Yeah.
And again, it's the writing around Pycelle is such that we just don't know. I mean, I pointed out when they had the first small council meeting that Baelish talked to him in a way that suggested Baelish wasn't convinced by the doddery old man routine.
Yeah, that's right.
But maybe it's true.
Yeah. But Ned never seems to get suspicious of Pycelle's answers, but there have to be some nagging doubts.
Yeah, because, that's the one thing. The one time we get Ned's inner thought on whether or not Pycelle is telling the truth is on that very last line. Yes, and he says, I'm here to serve. And Ned thinks, yes, but who? Yeah,
because I felt like the rest of the time during their conversation, Ned was just accepting what he was saying on face value. When even I'm not the one questioning him. And I'm saying, ask him this. What does he mean by that? Follow up with this.
But then maybe this goes to Ned's character again. You know, he's such a straight shooter.
Absolutely.
That when he asks the question and he gets an answer, that was it.
Right.
That was the honest truth. Because he'll never make it as a cop.
No. You know? He's never going to make it in King's Landing if he doesn't start learning how to play the Game of Thrones a little bit better.
A hard-boiled gumshoe would have known to put the squeeze on this guy.
What's in this milk? This isn't honey.
And then the other massive mystery from this is why was Jon Arryn's squire knighted so quickly after his death? I mean, what service had he done? Again, I offered an alternative answer.
Yeah, and I think your alternative is very valid.
But
with
all the other things going on around Jon Arryn's death, all the other suspicion.
Right, there's funeral details and grieving process, and they've got to find a new replacement. And I got to knight this guy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, but actually, the funeral thing might go to the answer. You know, it might be like, we'll have 6 knights to carry him. Oh, Hugh, you should be one of the ones to carry him. You're not a knight yet. Come here.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
So then Cersei.
Yes, right. We just don't know. There's not enough information yet about whether or not, like you said, could have been slow-acting poison.
She could have been there when it was administered.
Yeah.
It could have been done on her behalf by a third party.
Absolutely.
We've said have happened many times already in this book.
Or Lysa could just be seeing enemies in every shadow.
Right. Yeah. Or making crap up to destabilize the realm just because she's mad about life.
Right. Yeah.
And life has dealt her an ugly hand right now.
Yeah.
A sickly child and a dead husband.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And presumably her losing babies has not done anything for her state of mind either.
Stability. Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yeah. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
So reach out to us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at ghost harrenhall. Oh, by the way, actually, I was reading just a little bit ahead, and Harrenhal gets a mention. Sorry, not reading, watching the TV show, and Harrenhal gets a mention in a next chapter. Or so.
All right.
I was very excited.
You'll finally understand why we're called the Ghosts of Harrenhal.
Well, the ghost
maybe
didn't.
not yet,
It was
yeah.
a person. Yeah. So we're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, so you can
Yeah.
follow us there. One thing we've noticed is we've done a push with our friends and people who've got in touch with us to give us reviews on iTunes, and that's really helped our
numbers. Yeah.
it's helped our download numbers, but it's also helped when you search for us on iTunes, we're moving up the list, kind of thing. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Any reviews you can give us. I mean, the good ones, the better. You know, we prefer that, but any review you give us gets us a little bit of notoriety. So we'd
Yes.
appreciate anything you can do.
It would really help a lot. All right.
Well, thanks very much for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.